Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second installment of Bright Ideas. I'm joined today with Danielle Barger. She is with DB Squared Law here in San Diego. I'd have to look back at the timeline, but I think you might officially be our first San Diego client. You'd be neck and neck with an architecture firm that we started with around the same time, but it's pretty close. Danielle and I actually met on a friend's boat, a mutual friend's boat, and she spent some time telling me about how her former firm approached IT and how she kind of differed with that approach. And someday she would want to start her own firm and be a little bit more proactive. And then that someday happened sooner than I think any of us anticipated. And so we began working together late last summer. And Danielle now has her own firm with a partner and a paralegal, I believe, is kind of the lay of the land. And they were set up kind of from the get-go in the cloud. So I guess to start, maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll hop into the details a little bit more, Danielle.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. I love to be the first of something, so thank you. So my partner, Danielle Battiest, and I had worked together for 10 years. We met in 2010, and we really wanted to kind of take a firm and be really in the new technology, because so many attorneys are still in the dark ages and they have paper and everything. And if you think about any financial advisor, anybody like that, they can send you secure emails, which I know we all agree is kind of a pain, but I wanted to be able to do that. And that wasn't happening. And so Danny and I kind of took our vision, and with the help of Adam, we launched at the beginning of 2020. This year, and so far so good.
Awesome. So I think the first question will be about us, and then most of the focus will be about you. From your perspective, how have we, I guess, specifically helped elevate your productivity by building your practice on the cloud from the start? Like the secure emails are obviously part of it, but kind of just how would you say that's impacted you, both from how you plan to work and now how you have to work on the day-to-day side?
So because we have everything in the cloud, I can look at something and my partner can look at something, and it's all just simultaneously being updated. And right now I'm sitting in my office, but if I turn on my laptop and take it to work, there's not any downtime to get everything all synced. It's just all right there. And it's backed up, it's secure, it's up to date. And so it's just really easy to access, I guess, is what the main thing is, easy accessibility.
Well, and I think from our side, the interesting part, so with a lot of our clients, and some of it's not necessarily that they want to work this way, it's that they have to. We do a lot of architecture work, for instance, and with those file types, the solution we used for you, which was SharePoint, isn't really adequate because it can't sync the drawing files and things that they need. But the interesting thing is we look at our client base and when the work from home orders started hitting, we heard from just about everybody, but we didn't hear from you until a few weeks later when you had just another normal random issue. I think it was actually Wanda in the office had some issues with one of the network ports not working, but it was a break from the literally hundreds of tickets a week of, I need to get my VPN set up. I need to get my VPN set up. I need to get my VPN set up. In your guys' case, you didn't need a VPN set up because everything was set up to not require it. It's definitely the way we want to go with more of our clients, but when you have the chance to start from the ground up, it definitely, it facilitates it a little bit easier.
I literally picked up my iMac, unplugged it, and put it here, and it worked. I didn't have to do anything different. And so all these people that were having trouble getting files, it was just kind of foreign to me. And it's funny because Danny and I joke that we spent, January and February preparing for this, not even knowing that this work at home was going to be the new future.
Absolutely. So I guess kind of from your perspective, I'm interested to learn more about how it's been going specifically for your firm and your clients, but maybe in addition to that, what you would say kind of as a legal professional advice you would have for people in this kind of uncertain time, based on kind of the experiences you've had working with your clients, what they're worried about, what you're worried about, that kind of stuff.
So I've definitely seen an uptick in business because people suddenly are having more time on their hands, and they're realizing that they've been meaning to do their estate planning. And that's what our business primarily is, estate planning and business law. And so we sent out a series of emails saying, hey guys, you know, there was a lot of optional documents that I was encouraging people to do so that their wishes were known. And they weren't necessarily things that were needed by me to complete their planning. They were kind of like extra credit points. And so I sent out some emails saying, now's a really good time to do that because you're sitting at home and you have the time. And that really prompted people to take a look at what they had in place, update it, and then of course, watching the news every day, finding that people are, you know, sick and passing away, they're wanting to make their estate plans up to date. And so that's a big thing that I've seen. One little kind of free tip, maybe for those that don't have estate planning with me, is to look at your advance directives. An advance directive is a document that you put in place to state who is going to make healthcare decisions if you can't make them yourself, and what decisions you want. There's a lot of older documents that are out there, and they would say something like, if I'm in a coma for blank days, let me go. And that number was usually 17. I don't know where it came from, but that's what it was. Same with things like, I don't want to be on a ventilator. And I don't like those kind of specific directives because, as you can see now, maybe you did want to be on a ventilator. And so it's a really good time to look at those because of COVID and what's happening and how people are getting sick. You might not have your wishes properly up to date. And so we've been spending a lot of time updating those for new clients and just making sure people are aware of that need.
Awesome. So on that specifically, obviously you're in San Diego, as we are. A lot of people that'll probably watch this, if they're connected to me, are in Kansas City. Is there, if someone's interested in talking to you about those services, do they need to be here, or could they reach out to you? Can all of that happen online?
So it can all happen online. However, my license to practice is only good in California and Nevada. So unfortunately, those folks in Kansas City, I can't help. Sticking here to California and Nevada.
All right. I'll work on making more friends here then.
Sounds good.
So you were kind of a new firm when this all started. So the working, I mean, obviously we talked about before we started recording, those first days there around your dining room table, there was definitely some close physical collaboration. Has the sort of opposite of that been detrimental to you guys at all, or is it just the workflows don't really demand side-by-side collaboration?
It's actually been better for business because it used to be people, especially older people that tend to do estate planning, who are thinking about it, they weren't really as technologically savvy as maybe somebody in our age range. And so now with everybody using Zoom and everybody getting very accustomed to it, the barrier of somebody having to drive to my office and see me has now gone, because now I can do it on Zoom, and I can add their daughter who is out in Utah onto the Zoom call and have a great family meeting. And with that, I think it's become more efficient because people are using these new tools, and I can actually even, you know, share my screen with people and show them what I'm looking at. So it's really, really helped. I've done a lot of training of other people. And again, I'm just doing it on Zoom as well. And so it doesn't matter if Wanda's sitting next to me or she's, you know, 4 or 5 miles away like she is right now. It's not impacted me negatively at all.
Would you anticipate that once this is kind of addressed, and once the coronavirus situation is addressed, either through more viable treatment or a vaccine or whatever, do you think that your firm will go back to kind of a more traditional work, securing the amount of space you need and working from there? Or do you think you'll keep your smaller office and just continue the way you are now, or you'll wait and see?
I'm definitely not going back. I like our setup right now where I'm working at home, my partner's at home, and my paralegal is womaning the office. They used to say man the office, and somebody said that was wrong. So she's there to do like administrative stuff. But I think the the negative connotation about attorneys who work at home or maybe not successful or whatever is gone. And I've quickly learned through this transition that my clients don't care where I am as long as I provide the services I've been providing. So it's really nice to be at home. I can go in and, you know, feed my daughter lunch and then come right back out here. So this is it for the long haul for me.
Awesome. I think that covers most of the things I had prepared to talk about. Do you have any questions for me or anything else you'd like to cover?
With all the people that are now working at home and maybe they don't have it securely set up as much as they should, what are you telling business owners as far as like cyber liability and concerns, and what are you kind of recommending for that?
Good question. So one of the changes we have begun to make at Firefly based on I hired kind of a consultant broker type of person, a gentleman that doesn't sell insurance coverage, but he's willing to wade through the weeds. And so he reviewed everything that we had at Firefly, and one of his biggest recommendations was that we should shift from suggesting people have cyber liability insurance to basically mandating it. And so that's a process that's going to take us some time with our client base, but it's the direction we're heading. So that's kind of the first tool, is that everyone needs their own cyber liability insurance. At Firefly, we of course have liability insurance, but some of the risks that we face are a little bit different. We have tools that allow us to manage lots of PCs, for instance. And so if we ourselves got hacked, it's important to make sure that we're protected, but our clients are also protected, so that you don't hit a policy maximum situation, for instance. So that's one of the instances. Beyond that, though, more like day-to-day kind of in practice, if someone is using their home computer, we've loaded our management tools on there. We're doing everything we can to make sure it's secure. We are pushing people as they can afford it in the direction of Windows Virtual Desktop. It's another offering from Microsoft 365 and Azure, where instead of an end user functioning from their desktop, the desktop is basically a means to connect. And so you take away the need for, a nice, instead of buying a $700 or $800 Dell Optiplex, they could literally walk in anywhere, buy anything that runs Windows, Chrome, or Mac OS, and that device will be their conduit to the cloud, to a true virtual desktop. And so the benefit there is none of the data leaves. So you're always looking at a picture of it effectively. And so that's the direction we'd like to go. It's expensive, and so adoption has been slow. So in the other instances, we've taken a blended approach. So people who are really worried about data loss, we might use something, an example is a solution called Policy Pack. No matter the operating system, it allows us to put down policies onto a computer. So even if they have a work computer, if they're concerned about data loss, we can make it so that that user can't insert a USB flash drive and copy or move data to or from it. There was, 3 or 4 years ago, that would have been a pretty big deal. Anymore, it seems like almost everything's delivered electronically anyway. So we kind of look at each client and their needs and take steps in that regard, but it is without question a huge issue. And it's only gotten worse. As you know, it used to be they would steal your files, they being, these hacking groups. They would steal your files via encryption. So they have possession of the files, they've secured their access, but the only goal was to get you to pay the ransom so that you didn't have to deal with recovering the backup. That was kind of the goal. Anymore, this happened to Garmin in Kansas City, one of the largest firms in Kansas City. They were attacked, everything was encrypted, and the backups weren't the concern. They were, I'm sure they were, but the concern becomes, we're going to post all your data online, a little bit at a time, drip, drip, drip. And if you don't pay us, it happens no matter whether or not you have your backups. And so specifically with firms that have sensitive data, so that this has happened to colleges, it's happened to municipalities, it's happened to law firms, medical practices, but those firms that have data that is extremely sensitive, obviously that's a huge motivator to pay the ransom.
Right.
And so in a world that looks like that, then you have to step back and say, what more can we do to secure it? And so the things we just talked about are part of it. I think the real direction things are heading, you can kind of watch the military when it comes to stuff like this, and they call it zero trust is where everything's heading. Basically, as opposed to giving broad access to things people might need, they're literally granted access to only the things they absolutely need. It creates a management nightmare on the IT side. So you have to come up with solutions to quickly request access to those things that you need. But it limits the attack sort of plane of what could be hit by any one user's access. You just, if you were to infiltrate that user's session, you would have such a narrow amount of access that succeeding in an attack where you're posting things online would be much less viable, because you have a fraction of the data that might exist on that server, for instance. So that's where things are heading. I think the big key at the moment is just cyber, and until the solutions kind of become affordable for everyone, and they're heading in that direction, the pricing continues to drop. I think the big first step has to be liability insurance for everybody. If you're a business and you don't have it, it has to change. It's not very expensive, and as much as I hate that this is the answer, part of what you have that for is if this were to happen to your data, you have the ability to not have to pay the ransom yourself. A lot of what they're doing is they are negotiating. They partner with companies that negotiate these ransoms. So they're negotiating and ensuring that you get your data back kind of under your control. You're effectively negotiating with what I would view as a terrorist. So it's it doesn't feel good, but at some point we have to accept the reality that is reality. And so while it's not ideal, it's not where I'd like to see, it's not the way advice I'd like to give. It's kind of, it is what it is.
Interesting, because those concerns I have about internal procedures is why we are still a firm of 3, and I don't want to hire anybody, because how do I build that trust when anyone who's in my office is going to have a lot of sensitive data, and how do I train somebody? And so really we're just kind of turning away work because we don't have as much employee support, and I'm scared to get it because of all the unknowns that brings about.
Yeah, I think specifically in your instance, one approach would be to kind of silo technology off, or silo sections of the data off. And so maybe as you start to hire people, their focus is it has to be a little bit more narrow. They don't get the entire firm files folder. They're working out of some subset of that. I hate that that's kind of the reality we have to live in, but it's definitely a viable concern. And it's not even, it's the trust of the employee is one thing, but you're having to trust more than just their character. You're having to trust their kind of IT knowledge and skills, like as it applies to the use of the technology you're giving them. Like, I haven't really seen firms start to test potential employees for that, but I think that needs to probably start changing. Along with whatever personality analysis and whatever else people do,
Right.
kind of just general, maybe you subject them to a phishing test, along, like, all the way through it, or maybe you try to phish their personal email. I don't know what the legal liability is there, but at some point, I think it's going to become one of the skills that's needed in the workforce is kind of knowledge of what looks right and what doesn't, because so much of this stuff comes through email. It initiates through an email, kind of like a social engineering type of attack. So checks and balances are the biggest thing. The thing we've seen a lot of people face, and I know you and I talked about this several months ago with a situation your client had, but the wire transfer stuff is its own nightmare. And you have to have real world 2-factor authentication. So we urge everyone on their Office 365 or G Suite to have, at least the text code, if not an authenticator app, to certify their login. The real world kind of needs that when it comes to financial transactions and other things that are being directed either verbally or through email. There needs to be another factor to authenticate it. So anyway.
Yeah, that's what UCSD does. So I'm on staff there, and now their email, you have to go through this app in order to open it. It's very annoying, but I know it's needed, right? Because you don't know if I'm just going to leave my phone somewhere and then somebody has all the keys to the castle.
Exactly. All right. Well, I don't know that we've solved the world's problems, but we've at least talked about them.
Definitely.
I appreciate your time. I'll put your website on the bottom here so that people can find you if they're in California or Nevada. Definitely they should reach out to you, and I appreciate your time today.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks.